Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Let's Dev, the show that continues to document my bad math and inability to notice the small, minute details required to be a good game programmer. Well, a programmer in general. But anyway, before we jump into this episode, let's quickly recap what happened in the last episode to make sure that we're all on the same page. So in case the lightning striking comment didn't make sense, this is technically the 4th episode of Let's Dev that I'm recording, but I lost the commentary for the last 2 episodes, so actually it's a whole big mess and you don't need to worry yourself about it. The only thing you need to know is that last episode was a huge recap episode of everything that I did up until that point. And those things would be that I focused on branching paths and improving them somewhat. We made sure that all roads and paths stayed within the map's boundaries. We added an end marker for future reference that we actually did have to debug because of GameMaker's silly auto depth positioning. We added an early concept of the buildings to the end of branching paths. And finally, we added an active toggle to the master builder so that we can extend its functionality in the future when we need it. So at this point, we do have a general idea. It's starting to look a little bit more like a map instead of a whole bunch of lines scrawled across a blank canvas. And that brings us to what we are focusing on today. And today we're doing something a little bit different. Instead of staring at a bunch of code for today's episode, we're actually going to deviate a bit and we're going to start looking at art assets. And before we actually get into it, I need to give it a little bit of context. So let's go over the plan for today before we jump into anything. The original idea in terms of presentation was to present it as like a Zelda style, Pokemon style, sort of straight on, top down. If you've played any of the games, you know what I'm talking about. But after recording the last episode, I thought it would be cool to try something not only different, but maybe something that I've actually never tried in my life ever before. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So we're going to go with an isometric view, which explains why we need to take this break, because I'm pretty sure the presentation style will at least have some slight impact on the way that our maps are eventually generated. So we need to do some research, we need to play around with isometric sprites and just see what we can get out of it, get used to it, and see what we're going to need to tackle in the future in terms of making it look presentable at least. So okay, so first things first, and this could be the most convoluted way to do it, but because I have no experience doing isometric art in terms of like actual graphics that I plan to implement into a game, I'm actually going to turn to a program that I found through the power of Googling. It's a program called Magicavoxel. It basically lets you draw voxels really easily. And the reason I'm choosing this over using something like Blender, which is way more powerful, don't get me wrong, is because it has an auto export, a 2D isometric version of your 3D voxel model. I do believe the conversion was about 9 pixels per voxel. So in theory, this little box here, which is comprised of 4 voxels, would be about the size of our character. Now, since our sprite was set up by 48 by 48, in theory, this should be about the space that we're dealing with in terms of structures. So let's just, I don't know, let's just build something, just a face, and for now, let's just give it basic colors. I mean, the beautiful thing about this is we can just, you know, we can do our thing, and then we can take it into an image editing program, and fine-tune it in the future. But for now, we're just really trying to get our bearings so that we can continue our journey into the lovely world of making video games. Let's give it a few more angles so that we can really get a sense of what we're working with here. Look, I don't know. It works. So let's export an isometric 2D version of this. Okay, so according to the export, this is a 57 by 57 sprite. We got a few nice angles there just to get an idea of what we're working with. So let's take that into GameMaker and see what we can do with it. Okay, let's cut off 8. Oh, perfect. Perfect. So it's 49 by 49 pixels right now, which is fine. It's close. It's close. So let's just swap them out and let's see what we get. Interesting. Alright, so I don't know, maybe we won't need to refine the code as much as I thought we would. That's really interesting. Okay, so there's something I do want to try. I want to try something out here. Usually wouldn't want to do it this way, So obviously the perspective is going to be all messed up. I just want to see. I just want to see what this does. We need to stop it from doing any sort of animations. So first we turn the creation into a variable. Building dot, what do I call it? Building direction equals, my direction. Okay. So theoretically, what should happen is if the path direction is right, it should flip the sprite. Aha! It worked on the first run. This is a promising start because it looks like I'm not really going to have to tweak the pathing as much as I thought I would. Like in terms of logistics, I wasn't sure how the paths would work. So what I need to do now, just to get a better idea, is get 4 different angles of this isometric drawing. Now I want to stress the way that I'm doing this is very just haphazardly. I'll probably refine this process down the road, but since we're just testing for now, there's really no reason to, you know, get too concerned about it. So there we go. Okay, so now that we have 4 different directions, we can give it some proper presentation style. See, this is the learning experience for me because I just realized that in an isometric game, usually everything points the same direction regardless of the path, right? So I'm not sure what would look better if having buildings facing backwards is even a thing, because so technically having buildings facing upwards is sort of just seems to be a dumb presentation style. So yeah, now that I'm looking at it, wow, that was an interesting spread. So yeah, now that I'm looking at it, it seems to make more sense to have everything facing downward. You know, no building should really be facing upwards. I don't know, it doesn't seem to make sense. I mean, I guess it could make sense if you have like a threshold, like in like the lower hemisphere of the map, maybe they should be facing upwards. But then that gives a weird sense of perspective that, like this is really piquing my interest because I've never stopped to think about the nature of isometric art, you know? It's sort of just a concept I buy into. Holy moly, that was one hell of a map. Technically the perspectives are all right, but all the buildings are just manic. Some are facing one direction, some are facing another. And I mean, in reality, not all the buildings are facing the same way, but usually buildings within certain, you know, I don't know, groupings, if you will, on a map, they're all probably going to be facing the same way in terms for the sake of symmetry, you know? Symmetry goes out the window considering we're just drawing crazy pathways regardless, you know? Now the thing I should probably note too is that we might not even be working with logical buildings here. Like the entranceway is not important. Let's just have it choose a random direction. Just, it can either look left or right. I don't know, let's see how that works out. Yeah, I don't know. So I mean, the reality is the final product is we're not gonna have just one structure, you know. See, I don't know, maybe they should all just face one direction, but then I feel like that's too boring, you know. I am importing a gigantic hospital thingy that I just made for the fun of it. We're just gonna shove that in. That was a weird way to say that. We're just gonna put it in and just see the major difference. Holy moly, I need to trim this down some. Well, the trim is not perfect, but it's okay. Alright, let's see if I remember how to make an array. Just to make this easier on myself. Sprite 5. Sprite, choose 0, 1. Okay. Will that work? I haven't done an array in so long. Yep, it broke something. Had it in the wrong order. Yep. Oh, the collision code that we added, making it a little more complicated to actually get the big old building in. Oh. Seems to make more sense to have everything just pointing the same direction. Let's give ourselves 10 voxel, a 10 by 10 by 10 voxel space. I don't know, let's just build some weird, I don't know, reverse window building. I don't know. kind of robo walker. I don't know. Use your imagination. Imagination. What am I building? This is the stuff of nightmares. It's fine. It's fine. Let's just export it. Oh my, that looks... that looks horrifying. Oh my god. What did I build? That is... Oh my god. Yeah, it's I think it's safe to say that it might be better to have everything just face the same direction. Okay, let's see. Added a variation. Let's just see how it looks flipped. I don't know. Maybe I was wrong. Using the more abstract, weird spider creature model thingy that I made, it makes a lot more sense to just have it rotate either based on direction or just a random rotation. The thing to remember here is that these are structures, but they're not like the game that we're making isn't trying to mirror real life, you know. They're just literally going to be that, you know, structures at the end of paths or out in the middle of nowhere. So I don't know, seeing it in action here, I mean, it looks fine like this, you know. Assuming that a lot of our structures are going to be more abstract and they're not really going to have to adhere to the logistics of realism, you know, so to speak. I think maybe what I'll need to do is just do more research on isometric art, and especially in terms of its execution in games, because from an abstract point of view, it really doesn't matter, you know, what the perspective is, as long as it gets across the idea that it's a structure, you know. So I don't know, I'm feeling okay with this, but I guess I'll pass the buck to you guys. What do you guys think? Should it be more uniform? You know, should everything face the same direction? Or, I don't know, maybe a focal point would work better, you know? Everything below a certain y-axis would be facing upwards, and maybe everything above that y-axis would be facing downwards. But again, I don't necessarily know if it needs to have consistency. Or, you know, maybe there's just an aspect of isometric art that I'm not getting, you know? So yeah, this is all new territory to me. Maybe I need to continue rounding out the pathways before we do anything. But I actually think that's a good place for us to call it for now. I know that this might not have seemed like a lot, but this was more about, you know, researching, trying something different, trying something new. I think maybe next time what we'll try to do is focus on the pathways. Maybe we just need to round them out a bit and really get the presentation to be more solid than, you know, what we have now. I don't know, we'll see. But anyway, as always, if you enjoy this series, if you want to see it continue, please give it a like. And as a viewer, if there's anything I could be doing better in this series to make it more enjoyable for you as a viewer, not only is it a game that's a work in progress, but this entire series is a work in progress. So if there's anything, any suggestions, leave them in the comments, take them on into consideration. I know that this was a very different type of episode than what we were used to. Hopefully you're actually going to see it. If you're hearing this, everything worked out, thank God. But before I jinx it and break it somehow, I'm just gonna leave it there. So once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. So I put it in a small controlled map to just test the redirection code, which basically told the branching paths, if you get to an edge, if you get to a certain margin, pretty much just do a U-turn. So for example, if the dominant direction was to go left and it hits the left